Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een. Barakallahu feekum, mashallah. Another day. Assalamu alaikum Zatmar. Was that you banging on the door?
Yeah, I was.
La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Taking from our khushur, brother.
Did you go away? No, I was waiting in my car then. Nobody opened up, so.
No, I need to go and open the door.
Oh, then I got back to my car.
Yeah.
That's
Khair. It's okay. So, I do want to start with the problem of evil, but there's a particular problem, is that it's already basically Sunday, so I don't want to start into that and then not finish it. So what I want to do is start Thursday and hopefully finish before Saturday or Sunday next week. And the other good thing about that is we can cover more fundamental issues. That way when we get to that, you have a little bit more to work with as well. So today I really wanted to cover the idea of, yesterday we kind of covered a little bit, of seeing is believing, right? The idea of knowledge and what is certainty, right? So if I say David is in the room, David is in the musalla, right? How do you know? If I see him, right? It's a certain level of knowledge, right, that comes with that. And so if seeing is believing, then what about the sight of others, right? What about the sight of others? So we know, for instance, that China exists, but I've never been to China, right? How do I know? Because of transmission, which we call sam'iyat, right? Reports. I know from transmission. I've never seen the place. I don't know the place, but I know it exists because so many people have gone there that I have yaqeen, I have certainty that it exists, right? But my certainty is not like the one who's seen it by plane. My certainty is not like the one who's walked in downtown in China, right? I know it exists, but still there are levels of certainty, right? So it's not like certainty is a thing that has a ceiling. One can know more and more and more, right? And one of our maxims, right? Al-yaqeen la yazalu bishak, right? That certainty is not diminished by doubts. And we've explained this a few times throughout the series. You'll see it come up if you rewatch the videos. But from a spiritual angle, sometimes what we perceive to be doubts is actually an increase in yaqeen. We're actually leveling up. Our certainty in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or our certainty in a thing, is actually getting stronger, but we perceive it to be an attack on what already exists of our certainty, right? So inevitably, right, when we talk about yaqeen, one can go above yaqeen, and even in the Quran there is a precedence for this, you know, ilm al-yaqeen wa ayn al-yaqeen wa haqq al-yaqeen. We see Allah mentions that there's different levels of certainty based within the Quran. So this is nothing extraordinary, right? So the sight of others is what we call in the Islamic tradition tawatur, right? Tawatur is basically when so many people saw something that it becomes irrefutable evidence, right? So for instance, if one person walks in the door and says, oh my God, there's a fire, what are you gonna do, right? Maybe you'll say, oh, okay, right? But if 50 people walk in, right, and they start screaming, there's a fire, somebody call 911, somebody do something, immediately you're gonna act on it, right? So many people transmitting to you this reality, you don't need to see the fire. So many people that are going through it. Now, this is where we get into the whole idea of isnad, right? Of chains of transmission, the idea of a jarh wa ta'deel, right? Narrator criticism, right? So if a child walks in and says there's a thing on fire, you might question it a little bit, right? If a guy's coming in here wobbling, he's drunk, and he says, oh, there's a fire. You question it a little bit, right? So the idea is that if we say seeing is believing, then that is the very foundational premise for believing reports, right? And so alhamdulillah, Islam, even when we look at, aside from empirical arguments, now we get into the Quran, the Hadith, right? Transmission reports, right? How strong are they? The strength of them is the sanad, the sight of others, right? And so alhamdulillah, when we look at the Quran is tawatur, right? The Quran is mass transmitted, right? The Quran has a chain. You can get on that chain right now. You can go to someone who's on a chain and they can add you to their chain, and it goes all the way back to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allahu Akbar, right? So in our deen, we don't rely on anything blind. It's all concrete. It's all yaqeen, right? So we have something that really no other religion in the world has. So for those who are truly devoted to scientific exploration, this is the only religion for you. There's no other religion that is authentic to this level, right? And that may sound kind of preachy, but this is yaqeen, right? So this is, something that we move from, right? When we look at traditionally how Islam is studied, it really starts with your experience with the Quran. You hear a few hadith, you start praying, etc. You start without yaqeen, in a sense. Or you start with some type of informal sense of certainty in a creator or some type of leap, right? But when you study Islam in this way, you don't need to take a leap. You just need to learn. You need to ground yourself in knowledge. And this is why this form of upbringing within deen is really a different monster that's able to, from the moment that a child is of a reasonable age, right, that they're able to invite critical thinking into their lives, and they're raised into the society of deep misinformation, they have to start engaging with arguments at a very young age. I remember in my youth group, I would have kids saying, when I meet God, I'm going to ask him. I remember a kid came up to me, he was like 9 years old. He was like, when I meet God, I'm going to ask him who created him. What? So, what does this mean? These kids are engaging with kalam before they're even barely raised into the deen. So to teach a religion that's not empowering them to read arguments for if they are even sound or not, right, is failure of a worldview, right? Because really what we're building at the end of the day is an Islamic worldview with which analyzes everything. Because at the end of the day, Allah is not one to be questioned, right? Allah is the answer to all questions, right? But we need to teach people, right, how to think systemically, right, about the world and about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this, I believe to be, is the most effective way to do it. And, so that's why I'm so excited to compile all of these videos. It's like 14 now, very excited to compile all these videos and turn them into something more, inshallah ta'ala. But that's it for today, inshallah. And we will get there. He was telling me he's excited about the problem of evil. So we'll do that, inshallah, next week. We'll do one more session tomorrow, maybe a little bit more on tawatur. Some of the discussions, kind of intra schools discussions, different madhahibs, ideas, different scholars' ideas on tawatur. إن شاء الله تعالى فبارك الله فيكم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
Assalamualaikum.